You're listening to the LSG Sports Network, the authority on Texas high school football. Welcome to the Texas High School Football Coaches Show on Lone Star Gridiron. I'm Chris Daly, and it's my belief that the men that make up the fraternity of Texas high school football coaches are much more than a bunch of thick-necked guys with whistles. They do so much more than teach technique and the X's and O's of football. They take young boys and change them into young men of character. They get kids to believe in themselves, to trust others, and to put others ahead of themselves. Texas high school football coaches are unique in how they impact the lives of these athletes as well as the generations those kids touch. In this show, I sit down with a different Texas high school football coach each time and learn about them. Not their record, not their on-field accomplishments, but who they are and what they believe and what it means to be part of the greatest sport in the greatest state. This is Season 7, Episode 10. My guest today spent time in an internment camp. It will all make sense as I introduce you to Coach Sean Lorance after this. Hey, coaches, I want to tell you about a product I discovered that is going to be a game changer. Yeah, the Exploder Bar. As coaches, you want to get your athletes as strong as possible without jeopardizing their speed and quickness. The Exploder does just that. I know it sounds like marketing hype, but if you're like me, the second you see this lifting tool in action, you will recognize just how brilliant it is. Triple extension lifts are the key to more powerful movements, and the Exploder Bar was designed to allow these exercises to be performed in a safe and effective manner. And it's a great way to condition core muscle groups and ligaments. Check it out at PremierAthleticSolutions.com. The Exploder Bar is built for athletes who are looking for speed, strength, and explosion. Again, that's PremierAthleticSolutions.com. All right, everybody, join me in welcoming Coach Sean Lorance to the show. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing perfect, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So on this show, I like to go way back to the beginning. Where you grew up and where you discovered the game of football.
56 now. That's been a while. I grew up in Carrollton, Texas. I went to R.L. Turner High School. My 8th grade year, Jimmy Gunn came in as our head coach at R.L. Turner. He actually grew up near our apartments. I grew up in subsidized housing in a rougher part of town, and he was from our neighborhood, so we were fired up already. I played in middle school, and Mom didn't let me play in Pee Wee, so my first time to play football was 7th grade. And Coach Gunn came in. I was a quarterback, or at least I became one. I didn't know I was going to be one, but turned into one, and loved my experience with Coach Gunn, and fell in love with football. I was a better baseball player. I actually played in college baseball, but I wanted to be a football player. So when I got out, I wanted to coach football.
Yeah, and so after junior high, I assume you continued playing football in high school?
Yes, I was a quarterback.
Okay. And how did y'all do? How did your teams do?
It was a definite rebuild when he took over. And my freshman year, our varsity didn't fare very well. And then we got around 500 next couple. And then I had an ACL rupture right before the first game of my senior year. So I obviously didn't get to play my senior year, but we were very, very competitive. And Coach Gunn did a good job. It was a job that was probably not a gym when he took it, but he taught us how to work hard. He taught us how to be organized. I told him when I was a sophomore I wanted to be a football coach. I have an uncle that was a long-time head coach out in West Texas, and he pulled the pockets out of his shorts and said, "Well, this is all you'll ever have." And it didn't scare me off, so I still wanted to be one. And and I ate dinners at his house on Wednesday nights during the season. We would talk about that, what I needed to do, and how I could get where I wanted to be, and he was a great mentor to me.
Nice. And so you knew you wanted to coach football, but you went on and played college baseball, right?
Yeah, nobody wanted a short, slow option quarterback for some reason. Couldn't figure that out. I played, ended up re-injuring my knee a couple more times in college, so it was kind of a short-lived stint. In fact, I'm just coming off about 3 months. I had my knee replaced. It was the fifth surgery on that knee, so I feel like I'm 25 again.
And so where was college?
Southwest Texas State. I'm sorry, I can't refer to them to their new name.
That's right. I'm with you. Great community to spend college time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So did you actually go to college to be a coach, or did you pick that up after college?
Well, I went in to be a teacher, because that's what Coach Gunn told me. The coaching part, is kind of not a lot of standards. It's not probably the way I meant to say it, but there's not really you go to be a coach. You go get whatever you're going to teach, and then you hope somebody will give you a shot. So there's not really a grooming period to be a coach of any kind, except to make contacts, play, and then go try to get hired. And I was fortunate. My first job was Joe Martin, who's now the president of our association. Just got his first year at Garland High. So I got hired on as a freshman coach in 1992, and he put together a phenomenal staff. And then, of course, we went on that great run. But I've only worked for 3 coaches in 31 years, and all 3 of them were great impacts on me as a head football coach, immense impact on me as a head football coach. But it was Joe Martin, then it was Ronnie Mullins, who was a longtime head coach, athletic director in Dallas, and Jeff Jordan, who was I went back to Garland High in 06 and worked for Jeff until he left to go work in college. Now he's at TCU. But I had 3 great mentors that helped me, I had 12 years as a head football coach, and everything I learned or did, I learned from them. Excellent.
Well, we'll get into that. Let's talk about each of those positions you had up until your current one.
Okay. Freshman coach at Garland, our offense coordinator was Ronnie Mullins. He got the head job at Naaman Forest, so I went over there to be his defensive coordinator. It's funny, you know how people put timelines in envelopes and seal them, and I want to be this by then, and I want to be that by then, and I had a goal of being a coordinator by 30, and I made it at 27. And then I reshaped it, wanted to be a head coach by 35, got to it by 32. And, it always seemed like I was moving upward. And, again, very fortunate for the people I was around. That's how I got these opportunities, was because of the quality of programs and people I worked for. But I was a coordinator or a head coach for 28 of my 31. So I kind of led a blessed life,
Right. So after the defensive coordinator job, what was next?
I got my first head job at Crystal City. It's a little small town in between Uvalde and Eagle Pass and Carrizo Springs, kind of sitting right there. Absolutely loved it. I say this all the time. I don't regret any job I've taken or left. But if I was not 35 and thinking I needed to keep moving on to these bigger and supposed better places, I could have spent 30 years there. That place was perfect for me. I loved it. I loved the kids. I loved the community. I just wasn't smart enough to realize that at the time. Which I tell my coaches that a lot. When you get places, don't always look to the next one. Try to really hunker down. And I think I was present. I mean, we did a great job. But you don't have to always be looking for the next one.
Right. Yeah, and I learned recently that Crystal City was home to World War II internment camps.
Yes, a Japanese internment camp. Actually, we had a 50-year anniversary of that when I was there. And it was very, I'm a history guy, so obviously that was very interesting to me. And, all of our buildings, except for when they built the new high school, were buildings that were used in the internment camp. Our elementary school and that whole little campus area was part of that camp. So you had a daily reminder, and then you probably didn't see the other thing they're known for.
No.
That's the spinach capital of Texas. That's where Del Monte packs their spinach. So downtown Crystal City, there's about a 5-foot statue of Popeye that got erected, I think, in 1933. It stands
nice.
in front of City Hall. Oh, it was awesome. When I got the job, Tommy Watkins, a long time, had over 300 wins. I got to know him. He was at Rowlett. He was Uvalde's coach. When I got the job, he told me, he goes, go to City Hall. They got a big statue of Popeye, and he was correct. I got a picture by it. And
nice.
Again, it's an interesting place.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list now. All right, so you're at Crystal City. Talk to me, continue the journey here.
Okay. 3 years there. One of the guys I'd hired is from, it's next door to Mineola. And Mineola's job came open, interview, was fortunate enough to get that. So I became the head coach at Mineola in 2003. Stayed 3 years. My father got sick, needed to go back to Dallas. So I called Coach Jordan at Garland and said, hey, I need to come back to Dallas. And I think, again, I tried to talk to my coaches like my head coaches talk to me. And it's so important about how you conduct yourself the place you're at, that even more importantly is how you leave when you go somewhere else. And I was hired back by 2 of those 3 guys to work again because I think I left the correct way, and I think I did a really good job while I was there. But I called Coach Jordan, and he said, yeah, I have a secondary job. So I go back to Garland High School and spend a decade there because I was having the time of my life. We were winning a bunch of games. I loved the staff, loved the school, loved it the first time. But again, was trying to go upward and onward, right? I had a different perspective when you come back down. I think I was a better assistant. I think because you understand the big picture so much better. And greatly respected Jeff Jordan and that whole staff. So I was just happy as a lark. And then Coach Jordan leaves and goes to Kansas to work for David Beatty, and staff kind of goes in the wind. So I was fortunate enough to get the Brian Adams job in 2017 and stayed there until I retired. I'll officially retire next week when my contract runs out.
Excellent. And you mentioned earlier Joe Martin, Coach Jordan. Talk about some of these coaches you worked for and with, and maybe something specific you learned from each of them.
That'll be easy. It might be harder to hone it down to just a few. Joe Martin, I thought was he ran a staff and a program better than anybody I've ever been around. And I'll say that I'm going to try to say this the cleanest way I can. He knows when to hug a kid's neck and when to kick them in the butt. I've never seen a guy that knew how to push a kid's button. You don't hear coaches say that all the time. You got to learn you got to find the button and push it. And he was phenomenal at that with adults and kids. I mean, it's a great story, and I hung on to this for a long time. My first year, I'm the freshman defense coordinator, and we're playing North Garland. This is plain as day to me. And we're not playing very well, and I get after the kids at halftime more than I should have, and he listened. He calls me in the office the next day and gets after me pretty good. And I can take a chewing. I was raised by a stern dad, and I can take a chewing. But the point he made was I wasn't angry at them. I was angry at myself for not preparing them enough. And that's where you should be looking, is you were blaming the kids for something that was your responsibility. And I hung on to that for the rest of my coaching career. And I tell that to coaches all the time. Be careful. There is a time to get after somebody and there's a time to challenge, but make sure you're doing everything you're supposed to do. And a phrase that I learned that I use all the time is, your kids deserve your best effort every day. So you've got to learn how to not bring the outside in with you, because we're trying to teach these young adults how to handle daily life and not let some of the outside influences affect them. And I hung on to that for a long time. Joe was really good at telling you where you were progressing and where you needed to progress. And a great mentor. I can't say enough about him. Ronnie Mullins was a lot the same, except he's had the work ethic was unbelievable with Ronnie. He got the name and job, I think he was 32, and our whole staff was 25 or less, dang near. And he had to handle a very young, energetic, hungry, that wanted to coach staff. It was a great young staff. and he had to kind of monitor that. It's a bunch of wild animals in there sometimes because we just wanted to work. We worked all the time, and we loved it. And he was so organized too. Joe was organized to the decimal point, and so was Ronnie. And Ronnie's still one of my great friends. In fact, had the great honor of bringing him back that in our 2021 season. He came back as a retiree hire and coached again. So I got to finish out, the year before last with somebody that I consider a dear friend. And we had a great year, won 8 games, most since 1986. And, it was a great deal. But it goes back to relationships. I've got all these people that I've hired or worked for that I know I could go back and work for again because, I was taught how to be. And then you get to Jeff Jordan, and there's no more organized football coach I've ever been around. I've always considered him one of the smartest football coaches I've ever been around. He's almost it's got to be like a photographic memory. It's unbelievable how he takes information and gets to where he needs to get. But the organization, it brought about our saying that I used to lot here at Bright Adams is we try to steal seconds. We're trying to make our practice so lean with so little fat that it is a constant moving from one thing to the next with very little downtime and getting set up. And that was Jeff. It was an amazing doctoral program in how to organize things. So, between Joe with, I think, learning how to handle people and kids, and Ronnie about the work ethic, and Jeff about the dotting the I's and crossing the T's and making sure you've done everything you're supposed to do. I use that phrase a lot with my coaches. It was a doctoral, class in how to be a coach, and not a football coach, just a coach. And when I was an athletic director, I did that with everybody on the staff, and I think that I was so fortunate, and that's why I have such a great affinity for our business. It's the best job in the world. And, a phrase I've used all the time is even on its worst day, this is the best job you can ever have because you have a chance every day to help a kid be better. And, I've tended to be around programs that were more like mine growing up, kids that I think need people that, one, try to stick around, but, are hard on them, but love them. And make sure they're okay. And I think we've done a good job everywhere I've been hiring people that promote that. And I've worked on great staffs that promote that. And it's got to start with that. Everybody wants to win. But our main job and our main concern has to be helping these kids navigate an ever-increasing difficult world.
Hey, I want to talk about one of our sponsors, Ready Sports Drink. Football star Aaron Donald always brings something extra to his all-pro performances. Ready Sports Drink. It's science in a bottle. Ready Sports Drink features premium hydration with 3 dominant electrolytes, not just 1 or 2. Ready Sports Drink. Complete hydration with extra energy from super fruits and B vitamins. All this with 0 added sugar and great tasting flavors. Ready Sports Drink, the future of sports drinks. And Aaron Donald's hydration edge every time he sets foot on the field. Ready Sports Drink, now on sale at your local Dollar Tree.
But our main job and our main concern has to be helping these kids navigate an ever-increasing difficult world so that they can be successful when they're out on their own. And it's it's all involved. It's everything in their lives. But we have such a big portion of that because we have them so much of the day. We have them 3-4 hours every day, sometimes more. And we can have, Joe used to say, you have an impact whether you like it or not. It's either a good one or a bad one. If you're not making an impact, no impact at all, that's worse than the other 2. So you have an obligation to make a positive impact every chance and opportunity you get. And that's what I'll miss the most. And I already do. Watching these kids work out in the summer, I'm hugging them in the morning before they start, and then I'm trying to get away so I'm not a distraction. But I'm going to miss that as much as the competition on Friday night.
Right. If you could, you've had a unique career in that you've dealt with really small schools and really big school districts. What do you see as the big differences?
In the actual football part of it, there's not. And I think I said that, and I think that's what caught their attention when I interviewed for both the 3As is there is no degree of coaching football. You don't coach different because it's 6A, and you don't coach different because it's 3A. If you do it right, it's coached the same. The difference is in how many of them you have. And that's where the adjustments are made. You know, at Garland, we'd have 175 kids top to bottom. And at Crystal, we might have 95, 105. You know, at a 3A, we have pretty good numbers, but you're not going to have the same amount. Practices are a little bit, or organized a little bit different. It's logistics. But the actual coaching of football doesn't change on any level. It's the logistics of making sure you're getting done what you need to get done and taking care of them physically and mentally the way you need to. And, you know, I've got one foot in the old school and I guess one foot on this new school going out. And, you know, I've been that guy that practiced for 3 hours and all that. And then you learn really quick it's about efficiency and not time. So, you know, when I was at a 3A where everybody's going both ways, or at Garland High where everybody went both ways for the most part, our practice was structured to be done, you know, in 2 hours, 10 minutes, which seems fast, but it goes back to that not wasting any time. So we could take basically our same format at Garland High and go to Crystal City and not adjust it a whole lot because it was efficient, but it also dealt with the same issues. So that would be my big take is the coaching of it's not different at all. Some of the best football coaches I've ever been around are 2 and 3A guys. Yeah. It's just you deal differently with a number of people.
And what about the community? Because in like Dallas, there's a lot more things, a lot more distractions than the typical small town Texas close down the town for football night.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you, one of the greatest experiences down in Crystal was we played LaGrange in the Alamo Dome and had almost 9,000 people there. I'm sure like that saying goes you've heard 1,000 times, you could have robbed that town blind that night. There wasn't anybody there. And there was a bunch of them in San Antonio that came to the game, but we had such a great crowd for, you know, playing. LaGrange was coming off their 2 state championships or 2 out of 3 years, whatever it was. But yes, you know, and they travel well. And I'll speak for South Texas and East Texas 3As. I mean, people travel well down there. You have good crowds, you know, and it might not be 12,000, but it fills up, you know, the stands that are there. And that was always great. Our fans traveled so well and supported our kids so much. And you're right, when we had pep rallies on Thursday evening, you know, the bonfire stuff and all that, it'd just be thousands of people. And it was a really neat experience. And you see all those people, you know, I tell people a lot, you know, I could walk in the superintendent's office any day I wanted to. And you get to Dallas, and I never shook the hand of our superintendent in 6 years. So, I mean, that stuff is different. You know, I knew all the board members at a 3A. I know our board member in Dallas. But you're just not around that. It's bigger. You know, you're not exposed to it. The administration building isn't 150 feet away from the field house. You know, and, you know, in the spring, I traveled with our soup in Mineola. We drove together, Mary Lucadoo and I. She loved athletics, so I always went to the away games, whatever was away after football season, and she'd always ride with me. And you're not going to get that in a bigger school district. You know, that's a small town school district kind of thing, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And what about the difference with the newer, younger coaches coming in? I've heard a lot of people saying, you know, they're impatient. They want to sit in the big chair immediately. You know, what have you seen?
That's not false, but I will say this. When I came in the 90s, all the coaches told me the best time to be a coach was the 70s. And then you got to the 2000s, and the best time to coach was in the 80s. And you know, now that I'm on my way out, I'm telling them, the best time to coach was the 90s. And, you know, it's just like everything. Lou Holtz probably said it best. Kids don't change. It's what we expect them to change. So going back to your question, you do get these younger guys that come in wanting to be coordinators quick, but so did I. But I think the bigger difference is how you approach it and teaching the work ethic of being a coach. Let's take Dallas, for example. One of the few negatives I have in Dallas is, and it's not really a negative, it's really just the way it is. Because of numbers, a lot of us don't have 3 teams, freshman, JV, varsity. A lot of us, especially the 5A schools, we have JV and varsities. Right. You're not going to get 1,000 coaches if you only have 2 teams. So what we're missing is that developmental group of freshman staff, like I went through for 2 years, where you're getting to do you get to wear a lot of hats. You're learning. You go scouting, where I learned a ton scouting on Friday night, and that's been kind of taken away in a lot of the bigger school districts where numbers are a problem. So I think that kind of delves into it. They become varsity coaches way before they're really ready. So you're really teaching them a lot of things while you're trying to get ready for an opponent every week. And I shouldn't have said it's a negative. It's just another obstacle and another aspect of it that's a little unique. And, and in places like big school districts, Houston, Dallas, all of them, you have turnover. And you're always going to have a little bit of turnover here and there. And that means you're retraining again because you're usually going to hire a young guy. Now, we were fortunate here because I knew a lot of people. Well, we had some experience, but we always had one or two guys, that just didn't have a lot of experience in the coaching side of it. We're college athletes. They knew all about that side of it. But the work ethic and the work requirements, that being a football coach especially entails is new to a lot of them. And it can be a little bit of shell shock sometimes if you don't do a great job, leading them into it.
Yeah. And how do you go about teaching the younger coaches the strength that you have in this brotherhood of Texas high school football coaches, how y'all really rely on each other and not just as bitter enemies across the field?
And we actually do talk a lot about that. That what was great about when I came in was, on Friday nights after a game, you might see 4 or 5 different staffs at a local restaurant or something, and you got to know each other on a friend level, and then go compete, hard on Friday. And we're missing that a little bit now. You don't see that as much as you used to. But part of the responsibility of a head coach is setting out those kind of parameters on what you expect from them on your staff alone, but that should carry over to any staff. Work ethic, respectability, all the things you want them to do, learning how to treat officials, learning how to treat opponents when it gets heated, all those things. And we do a lot of, for lack of a better word, in-service talks, in staff meetings. We usually, when we're done, especially in the spring and the summer, when we're meeting as a staff, we'll have topics that we'll go around the room and talk about and present some things. And, that's the first part. And then you got to see it, in practice and apply what you talk about in these things. And that's where you help the youth with, because sometimes emotions can get the better of them. There's older guys that can get the better of them. And if we're all in it together, we learn how to calm each other down. We learn how to stay focused, and make sure we're still making sure the kids are taken care of. Because, what I was taught and what I taught was if you're yelling at the official, you're not coaching your kid.
Right.
So one guy gets to yell at the official, the rest of y'all are moving on and get the kids ready for the next play, whether it's offense, defense, whatever it is. The head coach handles anything that needs to be handled, and you still handle it respectfully. But it really, you got to have applicable experience so that you can hone them. They got to go through some things. They got to go through some frustration so you can walk them through how to get over it and how to overcome it. And, all these guys want to be successful. And sometimes the hardest thing is when you're not, is trying to get them to understand you're still doing a good job. Wins are what the outside world sees as success. Our success has got to be that kid wasn't able to fill the hole on ISO 2 weeks ago, and now he is. That kid couldn't make that block 2 weeks ago, now he is. And, we tell the kids and the adults every week we should be better than the week before. That's how you judge if you've coached a kid. Wherever he's at, he's got to be better. Doesn't mean you're always going to have a 6'5" receiver that can jump through the gym and make every catch. It's that kid getting better from where he was. And sometimes it's hard to get kids to understand it because they want to play at a high level. So success comes in a lot of ways, and part of the maturity of playing and coaching is understanding where the successes are.
Right on. And you mentioned success. Ultimately, at this job, success is measured by these kids' lives. You've been coaching long enough that you've seen these kids grow up, have families. Talk about some of those relationships that you've developed.
Well, I'll give you two great examples. At a retirement party a couple of weeks ago, and players and coaches from all 30 years are showing up, and principals and everybody else. And there's two players sitting there that, are in their 40s now, and one is a captain of a firehouse in a suburb outside of Dallas, and one is a defensive coordinator at Wakeland. And I go back to them as kids and how their jobs fit them so much, the personality of who they were as players. But seeing them raise families, when I came back to Garland, I coached a kid who was the son of a kid I coached in the 90s. And what a great experience that was to hear him come in and say, my dad, I'd say something, and he'd go, my dad told me that phrase before. And you'd laugh about it. But, as you start to see these kids stop being kids, but you still see them, it's like as a dad, you still see them as kids, but they're not kids anymore. They're grown adults with careers and kids and everything else, and you're so happy to see them, we had a kid at Garland that was a phenomenal young man, went and played college football at a small school on a scholarship, and he went to Boston University Medical School, and he's now a doctor. And he even said it after he graduated, do you ever think this would be me? And I said, I always thought it could be you, but you had to make it happen. But when you see these kids, especially when you're talking about in an inner city or a suburb where these kids are maybe not as in a place that affords them as much opportunity as some others, and you see them still overcome it and become very successful. And, it's exciting, but it's them. I always tell them that they'll try to say something, Coach, you helped me do this. No, it was you. The opportunity was there and you took it. And I'll tell those young coaches that's what we're supposed to do. We got to teach them that when the opportunity is there, how to take advantage of it. And then it's up to them, whether it's taking on a down block or a base block or going to school. Whatever opportunities arise, they've got to take advantage of it. But our responsibility is to make them feel comfortable and confident enough to take advantage of it. Whatever. Well, Joe Martin had a phrase, we will win, I've used everywhere I've ever been. And if you're from the outside of looking in, you're probably thinking we will win means we're going to win football games. But it was we will win is the mentality of everyday life. Just like I tell my kid, well, win may be you struggled getting on time to your math class and you made it all week. That's a win. You struggled with that homework. That's a win. Find the wins in your everyday life. And the mentality is I attack and I try to win in everything I do. And I, again, going back to Joe Martin, I've hung with that phrase since day one. It's on a lot of T-shirts. It's how we break out. But our kids understand. When I painted it on the stadium at Mineola, people actually had a few community guys say, well, that's kind of arrogant, telling them you're going to win. But we hadn't had that community meeting yet to tell them what it meant.
Yeah.
So when we did have that meeting, then they understood. It's not just about winning. We all want to win. We said that already. We all want to win. But there's a lot of ways to win when you're talking about kids that are in high school and middle school and college. That it's not always tied to the win-loss side of it on the scoreboards.
I love that. Coach Sean Lorance, I tell you, one of the ways I won was in this great conversation.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to miss this. This is part of it, is getting to talk about kids and talk about football. I am going to miss this. And then I'm saddened and I'm having second thoughts and all the things everybody goes through, because this has been such an impactful side of my life since I was a kid. Athletics is why I went to college. Athletics is how I chose to, do my career, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful every day for what I got to do.
Right on. Thank you.
Did you play Texas high school football? If you did, you're part of an elite group, the Brotherhood of Texas High School Football. All football players, past and present, who have ever suited up in the Lone Star State are eligible. Go to LoneStarGridiron.com/brotherhood. And thank you for the part you played in the greatest sport in the greatest state.
Until next time, I'm Chris Daly, and we'll see you at the game. Hey, if you're involved in your team's fundraising, get this. I was recently introduced to Success Fund, and I was blown away by what it can do. If you're not already using Success Fund to manage your fundraising, you'll really want to check this out. SuccessFund.com. That's Success, F-U-N-D.com. It's not a specific fundraiser, no. Now, Success Fund is a platform with free tools that makes it easy to run whatever fundraiser you're already planning. Sponsorships, donations, camps, clinics, whatever it is, Success Fund makes it 10 times easier. Plus, schools use it to accept Venmo, which is otherwise not an option. Because so many thousands of fundraisers have been through their system, these guys know what works and what doesn't. And they just put out a free high school football fundraising guide. Yeah, you can go and download the guide for free at successfund.com/football. It takes 2 seconds to grab it. Again, you want to be sure to check these guys out. But at the very least, go grab this free football fundraising guide at successfund.com/football.